Hi, this week's Weekly Roundup. There's a number of new SBCs announced, as well as a battle between several companies wanting to dominate the IoT market. First up, on Kickstarter, there's the Free Play campaign, which is a kit that allows you to build a handheld RetroPie device. There's two models, the Free Play Zero, which runs on the Pi Zero, and the Free Play CM3, which uses the Pi 3 compute module. The Free Play Zero kit comes with these bits, but you'll need to supply these. The Free Play CM3 is apparently still in prototype stage. The eBot arm is a small robotic arm built around what looks like SG90 servos, a CSR Bluetooth module, 8-channel servo controller, 6 knobs for control, and an Iron board, which is in an Arduino form factor. Looks like a simple but well planned product. Of course, I just missed the UpCore campaign in my last weekly roundup. The Up guys are stepping up the pace with this new board and are starting to be the main driving force behind x86 based SBCs. Based on the quad-core Intel Atom X5Z8350 CPU with 1, 2 or 4 gigs RAM, 16, 32 or 64 gigs eMMC, HDMI, ADP, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, USB 2.0 and USB 3.0, RTC, PCIe 2 and all the usual GPIO options via a 100-pin docking connector. It's powered by DC jack and has a well-needed fan connector. All in a tiny 66 by 56mm board at €69 for the 1 gig module. The Duo Travel is a good idea if you want to do some coding on the run. Contains an Atmega 328 with a 16 by 2 LCD screen and 32 kilobytes of EEPROM. They have their own pseudo programming language with a few maths primitives to code up some basic programs. This next one would interest one of my subscribers. The Audio Injector Zero is a sound card that fits onto the Pi Zero, has stereo in and out via RCA connectors and electret mic that you'll need to source and solder yourself. Capable of handling 96 kHz at 32-bit audio resolution. At the other end of the spectrum is the Chazwazza, or however you say it, which is a self-contained 2-port vector network analyzer. The price looks steep, but it is actually pretty decent considering these types of devices cost a whole lot more. Capable of a number of graphs such as dB magnitude, Smith charts, and voltage standing wave ratio. If you're into RF, might be worth checking out. While we're on RF, the Zygate is a USB to Zigbee gateway. Contains a USB to TTL board attached to a Zigbee module, capable of talking to a range of home automation products already, such as Pluzzy, Philips, Osram and IKEA. A nice bit of retro for this next one. This creator has made several of these. He's now back with version 5 of his oscilloscope clock. This new version contains a GPS module for accurate time syncing. There's several pledge levels from just the control board all the way up to a fully assembled clock. And Indiegogo has nothing really. Shame. But Crowd Supply does. The BioMio Sidekick is in pre-launch status and provides biometric sensing, NFC, RFID and smart card reader. Could be potentially used in door locks or password protection. No more details apart from that, unfortunately. I mentioned in a previous weekly roundup the MicroZ board, which was a small board based around the Zinc 7000 FPGA. Z boards have now added the Mini Z to its lineup, selling for around $89 compared to the $199 of the MicroZ. Contains Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 512 megs DDR3 RAM, 128 megabit flash, 8 gigabytes eMMC, Arduino compatible headers, along with 2 PMOD connectors, motion sensing and microphone. This is great to see and is hopefully the start of a flood of FPGA boards. Over at Linux Gizmos, they are running their yearly competition for the Hackerboard survey. There's 27 SBCs up for grabs and all you have to do is answer a 3-minute survey. Nice. What does Ubuntu and Turtles have in common? Well, nothing really, except if you're talking about the TurtleBot 3. These are pretty expensive, starting at $549 all the way up to $1,800. But if you're heavily into robotics, then this board has Intel Joule or Pi 3 along with LiDAR, OpenCR, RealSense and SLAM algorithms. We're starting to see a bit of a fight now between Google, Apple and Amazon in an attempt to grab the IoT market. I mentioned in a weekly roundup last year that Amazon released a preview of AWS Greengrass, but it has now been officially released. It supports a range of boards from Dragonboard, Pi3, Artix and Advantech, and handles all the messaging, caching and compute power in the AWS cloud. While Apple have now officially recognised that people want to hack around and have opened up the HomeKit specification, essentially not much has changed except you can now use Homebridge without violating Apple's terms and conditions. Another all-winner A64 board has joined the ranks of 64-bit boards. This one coming from Olinux Zeno, or however you say it, which has 1 or 2 gigs RAM, SD slot, 4 or 16 gig eMMC, HDMI, USB 2.0, all the usual GPIO options, gigabit Ethernet with optional Wi-Fi module and power from DC jack or LiPo. Coming in at around €50, it's a fairly decent board. CompuLab have a new NXP MX7 SOM with a unique feature. It has a flexible cable connecting 2 boards that can be folded on top of each other. Great for reducing space requirements. Contains the dual-core Cortex A7 and Cortex M4 cores, 2GB RAM, 64 gigs eMMC, gigabit Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all running off a 3.2 to 4.5 volt lithium-ion battery. This thing is tiny at 30 by 27 by 8mm. Remember the Pine64? Well, the Pine64 guys have now come out with a new SBC based on the Rockchip RK3328 with 1 to 4 gigs DDR3 RAM, eMMC socket, SD slot, 128 megabit flash, USB 2.0 and USB 3.0 ports, gigabit Ethernet and a standard 40-pin GPIO header, and an additional 22-pin GPIOs, all contained in a nice Pi form factor, but with a few differences that shouldn't affect putting this thing in a Pi case. Also, power is from a DC jack, which is a good move. Here's another Rockchip based board, this one based on the RK3399, which is a dual-core Cortex A72 and quad-core Cortex A53. It also has 4GB DDR3 RAM, 4GB eMMC flash, SD, USB 2.0, USB 3.0, 2 USB-C, gigabit Ethernet, HDMI, ADP and PCIe. This is the DIMM board which fits into the main board. No indication of pricing, but it will probably be expensive. One of the issues with newer SoCs is the writing of software that supports them. In a good move by Huawei, they have released their kernel sources for their Mate 9 smartphone. Why is this great? The Mate 9 runs the Kirin 960 SoC, which means development on boards such as the HiKey 960 will ramp up significantly. OpenH have a few new 4G modules. The Pulsar is an Arduino Shield with 4G LTE, GPS, onboard antenna, Bluetooth, NFC, and also a SAM-D21 MCU. Not only can you use it on an Arduino, but you can mount a Pi Zero onto it. It even supports 4G OTA reprogramming. Then there's the Quasar, which is the same module but designed for Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone. There's a few interesting things over at Tindy this week. If you're into Star Wars or just flashy LED sticks in general, the Tiny Saber is, well, a stick of LEDs, but also with an AT-Tiny 841 MCU, LiPo and a snazzy case to fit it all in. From the same Tindy store is the Tiny Arcade, which is a kit to build your own, well, Tiny Arcade. Contains an Atmega, OLED and some buttons to mash when playing Invaders, Flappy Bird and, oh yeah, Wolfenstein 3D. I'm feeling sick again. Here's another LoRa board that also contains an Atmega 328. It breaks out all the GPIOs and allows you to connect to any LoRaWAN near you. Here's a board from Microwavemont that contains 2 I2S based MEMS mics. We've seen a number of boards based on this VL53LOX time of flight chip. This allows you to connect it to any Teensy from version 3.0 onwards. Now, I don't condone this, but this next board allows you to cause a lot of mischief. It allows you to disconnect Wi-Fi clients on an access point using the well-known DAuth attack. The end result is that the target device won't be able to access the Wi-Fi network, and you don't even need to be connected to the access point for it to work. If you want some decent navigation, then this board allows you to connect to GPS, Galileo, GLONASS or Beidou simultaneously. And this is a different type of display. It's not quite e-ink and not quite LCD, but it has the advantages of both. That is, the low power of e-ink and the fast refresh rates of LCD. At 1 Hz refresh rate, it draws only 10 microamps. If you're in need of a tiny inverter to power your 3.3 volt MCU, then this small one looks pretty good. Can supply a steady 3.3 volts from a 0.8 to 3.6 volt supply with an adjustable current up to 100 milliamps. And there's times when you need to opto-isolate your FTDI connection, especially when dealing with sewn-off devices. If you don't want to worry about frying the USB on your PC, get one of these. Seed have this pretty interesting camera module with inbuilt IMU that is similar to the PixieCam. It handles all the grunt work of keeping track of objects whilst the device is moving. It contains a 6050 IMU and dual CMOS camera capable of analysing at up to 65 frames per second over USB. The Z1 platform is a development board aimed at wireless sensor networks and runs a MIPS CPU with 8 KB RAM, 92 KB flash, Bluetooth CC2420, and can be powered from coin cell, AA's or USB. Also has onboard fidget sensors. The Raspberry is a board that will turn your Pi into a Z-Wave gateway. Runs the Sigma Design ZM5202 transceiver with a range of 150 meters outdoors or 100 meters indoors. Seed also have a bunch of water flow sensors, like this Hall Effect one capable of sensing up to 25 litres per minute, or this water pressure sensor able to measure up to 2.4 megapascals. Want an easy way of controlling LED strips? This board allows you to control all the popular strips from a USB port. Also has onboard DC jack, so you don't have to fiddle around with powering them. This CAN analyzer looks pretty good. Can send or receive CAN baud rates at up to 1 megabits per second and has integrated surge protection. Good if you want to roll your own vehicle OBD device. Over at Adafruit they have a 160 by 128 pixel color LCD with resistive touch that connects to a Pi board and can handle a 30 frame per second update. Or this small 128 by 32 OLED that connects to a Pi Zero. Runs the SSD1306 chipset and only uses the I2C bus. Or this 128 by 64 OLED using the same chipset but with 2 buttons and a small 5-way joystick. Over at SparkFun they have a quick-based water-resistant OLED display which is encased in resin to avoid moisture getting in. And if you have an ESP32 thing, then this power shield will allow you to power it from a wide 5 to 28 volt DC supply. There's also 3 MC33926 motor drivers capable of driving a 30 amp load. If you're drawing that sort of current, make sure you whack on some heatsinks. DF Robot have a range of ESP32 based products called the Fire Beetle. This one is the ESP32 board with onboard LiPo management. And then you have this Gravity I/O shield. Looking for a high-res TFT display for your Pi? Pi Moroni have the Hyperpixel, which is a 3.5 inch 800 by 480 pixel capacitive touch display, capable of 60 frames per second. It bolts straight onto any Pi. This uses the DPI interface to allow it to get to those blazing speeds. Man, that was another long video. I think next time I might look at splitting it up into 2 parts. Don't forget you can check out my website for all the links, and there's also a handy index in the description below. Thanks for watching. See you next week.